in 1913 in December, and we get the Federal Reserve banking system, the system that we have now. A private monopoly money franchise. Now, if anybody can think of a better gig, let me know what it is. Because in my opinion, that's the primo right there. Let me think about that. A private monopoly money franchise. You want money? You come through here. And we'll tell you how much it's worth, because we're going to be in control of expanding it and contracting it and creating wealth and collecting wealth. And that's the system that we've been living under ever since. So they function, the private Federal Reserve banking system functions as the central bank for the United States of America. So you think about that. The central bank of the United States of America is a private bank. Well, that may sound outrageous, and it actually is outrageous, but that's the way it is with all the countries that are out there that you can name right now. There are some that have a slightly greater connection between government and that private central bank, but private central banking is the name of the game today. So the key not only is that they lend money to the United States government that they create out of nothing, but that they lend all money into existence. And this is the thing that, if you don't, really get around this, you might think that maybe there's nothing wrong, but this was actually how my dad got me. I should say my dad's the third guy I'd like to dedicate this talk to, because my dad, when he tried to explain to me that, Joey, this system's broken. We got a system where all the money that comes into existence as a debt, repayable with interest. And that means all money in existence, because all money is created to come into existence, is a debt, repayable with interest. Where do we get the interest to pay on the debt? We don't. We don't. The money system that we operate under right now is a system that gets its power from scarcity. We create more debt than we have an ability to pay. I'm sorry, but I really needed to let that say. We have a money system that creates more debt than it creates any ability to pay. We can never pay the debt. As Pete said in the beginning, if we pay the debt, we won't have any money. And what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do tomorrow if we repay all that? No, the whole system is meant to increase the power of the issuing body, and the issuing body here being the private Federal Reserve bankers. There is never enough money to repay the debts, and there is an ever-increasing amount of debt. And this gets us back to, if you don't mind saying, where we're at today. What's the problem today? What's the nature of the problem today when you can finally try to stop those guys who are running around trying to put out the fire? Say, what's the problem? What's the problem? Sorry, I'm too busy. The house is on fire, and I need to create $1 trillion more debt this week so I can throw it onto the fire. You see? And I'll get back to you on what caused it. And I can tell you what caused it. It's the design of the system. The system is designed with scarcity at its core, and chasing the ability to ever repay those debts is what keeps us going and keeps us running faster and faster. Everybody says, well, now we've got 2 people in every family working, so pretty soon we're going to need 2.5, in every family working, so that we can maintain our standard of living. And that's one way to look at it. But we will never catch the debt. And we have the means to do it another way. And that means is the means that we started out with. That means is the means that where we came from. And that's what we ought to be doing. This phenomenon of money creation, now I got to tell you that right here, Victor and I had planned that we were going to be running a 2-minute clip from Zeitgeist Addendum movie Part 1, in which there's a perfect graphic of how money is created. But unfortunately, we come to find out that we didn't have that this evening. But what I want to say about it is this. The Federal Reserve creates money out of nothing and lends it to the federal government. Remember that federal government that represents the people, who are the descendants and if you will, those who followed the people that had the revolution so that we could have a sovereign money system? That government doesn't create the money anymore. Remember, Thomas Jefferson says, if they forget the freedom, what will happen? And here we are. Federal Reserve System creates the money out of nothing and lends it to the government, and that's us, until we have to pay it back. Well, if anybody thinks that that's a good way to run a railroad, I got a railroad to sell you. This is just a little thing from the Boston Federal Reserve Bank publications. The Federal Reserve publications are great. Just depends on which branch they are. There are 12 regional branches of the federal government, of the Federal Reserve System, excuse me, and each of them kind of have a little bit of their own take on it, on what's the right way to do it, how to explain it. And they say, when you and I write a check, there must be sufficient funds in our account to cover the check. But when the Federal Reserve writes a check, it's creating money. So you get this picture where these guys have the cartel, monopoly money franchise. They have the right to create money out of nothing and to lend it not only to the federal government but to everybody else. And this is where we end up. And this is where we are today. This is like the foundation of how we got to the point where we're at today. And we're at that point today. We have to decide, what are we going to do about this? Because I will tell you that the Geithners and the Summers, and unfortunately the Obamas, do not have a plan. Their plan is to create more of that debt by escalating scales. My dad told me, he said back in 1974, he said, in your lifetime, and the national debt at that time was $234 billion. We had almost 200 years of existence, $234 billion, like a billion a year. But he said, in your lifetime, if we don't fix this, you're going to see the national debt increase by $1 trillion, 1,000 billion, in 1 year. He said, in 1 year. And I knew that he was wrong, and it was one of the reasons why I was like, oh, I got him now, because there's no way that can be true. Well, there we were out there on the pond. Okay, we were coming to the close of the 2008 fiscal year, and I knew it. I knew it. I said, this is the year. And sure enough, 1 trillion, 1.1 trillion, and it's increased trillions since then. Trillions since then. So that's the situation that we have, and there are other ways to do it. And that's what I want to talk about. Had the crash of 29. Remember, now we had the Federal Reserve, we got the crash of 29, and FDR is elected, and he's a reformer. And he goes, we just came through this other crash. We've got the Fed. The Fed was created to make sure we don't do that again. And what do we got?